Let's do a little short talk here about torn out grain. Torn out grain is a terrible thing that we get as wood turners, and what it does is just tears pockets of little grain fibers out from one another and leaves holes back in the wood that we need to sand all the way down through. It's just a nightmare. Two main things that are going to help you with torn out grain, and one is having a sharp tool, and I mean very, very sharp. When I'm doing a bowl, I'm going to sharpen on the inside of a bowl. I may sharpen 5, 6 times just to do the last few cuts of the inside of a bowl. We need to keep the tools very, very sharp. After they've been used just a few times, you got thousands of feet going by, the one little sharp edge, it's going to get dull and it's not going to cut as cleanly, and then you got to sand all that damage. So sharp tools is the main thing. The other issue that people don't take seriously enough is the grain orientation. We need to go downhill to the fibers and having supported fibers. When we're on the outside of the bowl, we need to go from the bottom of the bowl towards the rim, and that'll be supported fibers. If we go the wrong way, it's going to tear them up as we go by, so we need to go the correct way. And on the outside, it takes special cuts. We got to do a pull cut and a shear scrape on the outside. On the inside of the bowl, we have to go from the rim towards the middle, and by doing that, we go downhill to the fibers again, okay? And what happens when we're on the inside is that we have to rely on the push cut. We have to rely on the bevel supported push cut, slicing the fibers as clean as we can on a 45-degree angle so that they're sliced off cleanly and going the right direction. Now what happens if I stick a scraper in there, or even some shear scraping methods, try to use it in there? Always with a scraper, we'd have to go backwards. We'd be using the tool from the center out to the rim. And so now two things have happened differently. First, I'm using a scraper, which is going to rough up the surface because it's just scraping. Rather than slicing the fibers cleanly, I'm going to rip off each one of those little end grains by scraping. And secondly, when I use a scraper, I have to go the wrong way. I can never scrape from the rim to the bottom. You'll always get a catch going that direction, so you can never scrape that way. Another thing that's happening when we get into the rotary forces of the wood is coming around. Here's the end grain and here's the end grain, so twice every rotation that end grain is going to come around by our sharp edge, and that means that before the end grain, the wood's going the wrong way by the tool. This is uphill, unsupported fibers. It's going to go chick, 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 chick. It's going to rip it out. And then when we get over here, now we're going downhill to the grain, then we go by the side grain, then we go uphill for another swatch. Chick, 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 chick. We're going to rip it up. Then we go by the end grain, then we go the correct way. We go downhill. This is great here. Everything's going cool. And then we get by the side grain, which is neutral, and we go back into that rough area again. So twice every rotation, we've got the grain going the wrong way past our tool. Now we can't control the rotary forces. We can only control the fact that we're going to use a shearing slicing cut going the right direction across the tool rest. All right, let's go over to the bowl. On the back of the bowl, we have to have some different cuts. We have to have a pull cut. We have to have the slicing action happening with the handle down, riding the bevel on the side. We're going to pull this direction. We can do that in slow motion. We can see the slicing action is going downhill to the fibers, right? So I have to have the handle down. What happens if I have the handle up and do that? I'm just going to be ripping it up. Or if I'm going to take a cut the wrong direction, with the cut happening this way, then I'm going to rip it up and have to sand all the damage. So I want to go from the foot to the rim with a slicing, peeling action, right? And that's going to give me the cleanest cut that I can and going to prevent me from having to sand all that torn out grain. When we're shear scraping, we're also on a steep angle so that we're peeling downhill to the fibers with a shear scrape. And that angle is going the right direction. It's going downhill to the fibers with a very sharp tool. We're going to use the burr on the wing to make a nice shear scrape cut. Okay. So on the outside, we have lots of tools. We have a pull cut, we have a shear scrape. We can clean off that surface so it looks like it's sandable down to about 320 grit, starting with about 320. On the inside, it's a different ballgame. Okay, the inside we cannot shear scrape. We cannot shear scrape on the inside because we'd be going the wrong way, and I don't want to scrape. We talked about that on the chalkboard. So on the inside, we'd be going downhill to the fibers with a push cut, and the push cut is also going to slice the fibers cleanly. Flute pointing in the direction I'm going to travel, 45-degree twist to the tool, and right at the tip, the last little shaving that's going to be slicing off there is going to be going downhill on a 45-degree slicing action. Now this is always going to be a lot cleaner than we could with any kind of scraping mode. Scraping can get a nice smooth surface here, but it's all going to be torn up on the end grain, and then we have to go sand all that damage. So even if I've got bad tool control and I have some tool marks involved with my push cut, it's still going to be easier to sand out those little tool marks than it is to sand through some pocked out, torn out grain. Okay, so let's turn the lathe on and we'll just get one little cut here so you can see it in live action. Okay. 45-degree slicing action, downhill. You notice how slow I'm going. The nice slow pace means that the fibers are being sliced cleanly. I'm patiently waiting for those rotary forces to come all the way around, round and around and around and around again, going by the tool slowly. And I can leave a nice smooth surface behind, the bevel's following behind. I'm steering it by swinging the handle and letting the bevel take it where it wants to go. That slicing cut is going to be cleaner than the torn out grain you get from scraping. Okay?